it's Daz. It's been a while. I've missed you guys. Work has kept me super busy, and it's been kind of a trying time. I wanted to talk a little bit about spiritual warfare as well as cycles. A lot of times when I go through something and I share it, I find that others can relate, so I thought now would be a good time. I actually was working on a video over a month ago before I got caught up in traveling so much for work about keeping things private, moving in silence, and monitoring spirits. And unfortunately, I didn't upload it because I was busy and I was out of town so often. But in that time, I found myself withdrawing more from social media in general. And in a way, it was peaceful to my psyche. But then I found that I was dealing with more just like craziness all around, like problems during my travels, eating food and it tasting like it had been left out, getting rashes, just feeling like I did back in 2016 when I did that sign someone has hexed you and how to end it. I'm not going to blame this on witchcraft, but I will say it definitely felt like a lot of spiritual warfare, and even having car troubles with my rental and my regular car when I got home. But then I realized as well that throughout my life, like I've taken a look at patterns that repeat, and about every 4 years I've noticed certain things repeat themselves. I like numbered the years 1 through 4, and so I'm moving from my year 4 back into my year 1, and usually during a year 1 is when I find myself starting a new job or starting a new class or doing something for the first time brand new. But sometimes it comes with letting go of something else and a lot of just interesting lessons to be learned. While I'm not superstitious, and I'm not saying you have to live by numerology or by some kind of mindset like that, when you do notice patterns, it's good to kind of hone in on why that is. And something I did realize like 4 years ago when I went through this, because 2021 for me was sort of a rough year, I found that one thing I learned throughout that year was one reason I found myself in this predicament constantly was because by the time I got to my year 4, I was so distracted by the cares of this world, by the material world as I called it, that I lost track of really praying. I lost track of really just being spiritual. And then it was the hardships that kind of brought me back to that. And so as I've been experiencing these things now, like I've been praying and everything, but it does make me more grounded in my faith. But something I've noticed that's different this time, and maybe it's because I'm older, is whenever bad stuff used to happen to me, I'd always be like, why God, why is this happening? What it is about me? I would take it so personal. I would replay all the things that happened. I would be upset with those individuals. I would let it make me feel like it diminished my self-worth and I feel unloved, just unhappy. I'd listen to sad music and I'd mope and everything. But this time around, I'm like, you know what? I understand why this is happening. I live in a corrupt world. I live in a world where it's getting darker. I live in a world where there are people who just have really bad personalities. And unfortunately, they crossed me today and I crossed their path. Also, some of this isn't personal. It's just me dealing with a bad seed. It doesn't mean I don't take it to God, but also I've learned to speak up and advocate for myself, or even in my prayer life, like be more direct when I pray, and even just instead of letting it get me down for days, weeks, months, I just keep going. And maybe that's what growing up gets you for a while, and maybe it took me that long. I've definitely found that to be the case. I'm not saying it makes it any easier, because I do feel like every day it's been like a fight lately. I don't know what it is. I'd say within the last month or two, it's been crazy. But I've also felt more encouraged because I've just seen the strength of God, His goodness. I've seen His love. I've seen His greatness. If anything, I'm more radical in my faith. It only confirms my beliefs that I have and just my need for Him in my life and how I want to be in the light, not in darkness. And it's interesting how God uses these things to bring us closer to Him, but also how He uses it to strengthen us and sharpen us, because I do feel like at times in my life, I was very ego-driven and my ego got bruised from these events. And oftentimes I let it mess with my self-concept, and I didn't always lean on Him. Maybe I leaned on more like self-help, or I just went on a moping type of way of thinking. And I used to struggle sometimes with depression and thoughts like that, or just really dark thoughts. And instead, I don't let that get to me the same way. I remember hearing something powerful 4 years ago, that depression is anger turned inward. And I think that was the perfect way to describe it, because so many times when I get into that dark spot, I would feel so upset with the world around me, but I didn't feel like I could really do anything about it. So I would turn the anger in towards myself. And this time when things happen, I don't blame myself, beat myself up. If I did have something to do with it, I take accountability and I take ownership for my part to play in it. But at the same time, I realize that like we all make mistakes. I can move on from it and we're bigger than this. It's also just shown me God's goodness, because every battle that I face, kind of like a war, how there's battles, and I overcome it because of his goodness. It just reminds me that he never leaves or forsakes me, and that his plans are greater than my plans. Another thing I'll say with all of this is the whole moving in silence and keeping things private. It is so peaceful. Really don't announce your plans until you're basically living it, because there's so many people, for whatever reason, unfortunately, they're unhappy. They may want to see you stumble, and it's good when you don't tell the world everything. I get it. You're excited about something, you just want to tell everybody. But oversharing can also be a sign sometimes of trauma. It can also be a sign of maybe boredom or even insecurity. I know for myself that's been the case. Not saying everyone that does, but I found as I've been more secure in myself and just more at peace, I don't feel the need to tell everyone in the world what I'm doing, what I'm eating, where I'm going every day, even if I'm doing cool things or experiencing great things. I just like to keep it to myself, because when you love something, sometimes you keep it private. You protect what you love, sometimes with privacy. And moving in silence really is peaceful. You get so much more done without all the distractions and the naysayers, because a lot of times when you announce things, people are like, oh, I thought you said you were going to do this, or when is this going to happen? And it's just not that peaceful whenever everyone knows. Also, something else I briefly touched on in the past is destiny swapping. Like, there are people out there who, even if you think your life isn't what you want, someone else out there, it's their dream life. They may want to swap destinies with you. They may want the life you have, and they're kind of like have a monitoring spirit, and they want to have what you have, or they're only watching you because they're trying to gain intel, not for the best reasons. It's kind of like that person, when they message you, it's not because they actually care about you, but it's because they're trying to get something from you, or they're just trying to find information out. Unfortunately, we live in a world like that. The more you're at peace and you move in silence and you're just guided by the Holy Spirit, I do feel like sometimes the enemy tries to disrupt your peace, but the less he's successful with it. Nowadays, when people yell at me, which I still hate being yelled at, but because I used to cry when I was yelled at, or it would like cause my body to react, I'm not saying I still won't feel like disturbed by it, but I feel less triggered by it. Even like on Thanksgiving, I had to work and I was out of country, and I got dinner, and then my dinner was stolen, and that was a very upsetting experience, but I handled it so much better than I would have in the past. And I just know it was the enemy just trying to ruin my Thanksgiving and make it a rough time for me, because I had driven 3 hours before that to get to the hotel. And I had a lot of just very rude people that I had to work with that day. And even like people trying to try, but sometimes I laugh because I realize the enemy is trying so much harder to steal my joy, so much harder to steal my peace, because he knows that God has given me the peace that passes all understanding. And I just want you to know that he that lives within us is greater than he that's in the world, because so much of the time people try to make you feel the opposite. That's why they work so hard to try to discourage us in our faith. But if anything, it just encourages me of his presence and the fact that he's with us and he guides us. I hope you found this message encouraging. It was great talking to you guys. Again, I apologize for the long delay, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend. Take care. God bless. Until next time.